For me, because one of my best friends from the States is here having an eye-opening experience traveling in Israel with their family, and they happen to be here with their San Francisco synagogue and rabbi. So please welcome Stephanie Breitbart and Rabbi Ryan Bauer.
Hi, thank you.
This is so cool. I can't believe it. Steph, you and I have traveled many places around the world to meet up here. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah,
like yesterday?
It's exciting to see you again. It's great, yeah.
We've gone diving everywhere.
All over the Caribbean.
It's great. So first of all, tell me about the experience so far. I know you've been here before, but this time you're with a whole group, and you're seeing a different side of Israel. What's it been like for you?
This is my third time to Israel. It's our first time bringing our children. We have 3 children, and we've really done an amazing tour from the Galilee in the north, Golan Heights, down to the Negev Desert. Obviously, we spent many days in Jerusalem, seeing the incredible sights there. We have found the country to be incredibly interesting, stimulating, warm.
And look at this. The wall. I mean, this picture is great. I mean, what do you think? Is there a highlight, or is everything amazing?
I would say the 2 highlights so far have been floating in the Dead Sea and just looking out at Jordan and the country there and that experience, as well as being on the Israeli-Syrian border and looking at the active shelling that was happening there, and then getting to meet a couple of people that
exactly what we're going to talk about, because this was a very, very interesting experience. And one thing, I've known you a lot over the years, and you and I have, I guess, gotten more interested. We went to college together, and we've gotten more interested in Judaism and what it means to be Jewish. And I think for you, it was based on a personal journey of going through a very traumatic experience.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
So in 1995, I was in Kenya camping with a group of people for National Outdoor Leadership School, NOLS, it's called. And in the middle of the night, I was attacked by a hyena. And it took about 12 hours to evacuate me out of, we were in the Rift Valley, the Ngurman region of Kenya, and we were so deep in the forest, it took about 12 hours to get to Nairobi Hospital. Eventually, we got to a dirt airstrip, and I was airvac to Nairobi Hospital. And upon it being admitted in the hospital there, my best friend who was with me on the trip, she filled out the hospital papers, and it said to specify religion. And so she wrote down Jewish. And so that evening, that triggered a call from the hospital to the head of the Nairobi Jewish community, who then called Dr. Landra, who is a world-renowned plastic surgeon from Italy, who spends half his year as an animal lover in Kenya. And he was supposed to have dinner that night with the head of the Nairobi Jewish community. And he asked him, he said, "There's an American Jewish girl in the hospital. Can you please go help her? She's going to need surgery tonight." And he went on that Saturday night and came and operated on me. And additionally, for the following about 48 hours after that, which is what it took for my father to get to me, I had a stream of Jewish moms coming in and taking care of me, brushing my hair, bringing in a TV and VCR, and nursing me back to health, literally nursing me practically.
So that was a turning point moment for you to realize, the strength of Jewish community?
It was fascinating. I mean, how often in San Francisco would we get a call from Temple saying, "There's a Kenyan Jewish girl in UCSF, can we all go help her?"
Right.
That doesn't happen where we are. So the power of this community in Kenya and what it meant just to have a fellow Jew in the hospital who was away from family and suffering, that they went to my aid, was so powerful. So I had to defer Harvard Business School for about a year after that, because I was in the hospital at the time when school was starting. And I spent the year then studying for my bat mitzvah at 25. So just to try to understand and connect more with my Jewish roots and understand why it meant so much to these people.
Which is amazing. All right, now I want to bring you in, because, you are a superstar. I know that the synagogue, Temple Emmanuel in San Francisco, is one of the top 5 Reform synagogues in the country. You have a lot of members, and you do a lot of great programs. Tell me what kind of efforts are being made within the Reformed community to kind of bring Judaism, make it matter more to Americans, because I feel like we're losing so much of it because we live in such a multicultural country.
It's a good question. I think we sometimes look at these Pew studies, and it looks like things are declining. Our synagogue, our problem is we're literally running out of space at this point, and we're trying to figure out the problem. It's a good problem. It's a problem. And part of it is figuring out, how do you take these mitzvot instead of sitting in this very insular place, but studying it together as a group and saying collectively, how do we come together and radically change our city, and then hopefully change the country, and then hopefully
change the world. And how is Reform Judaism, it offers a lot more flexibility. Like, you have a very mixed group of rabbis as well.
Yeah,
like, it's just more open-minded.
Part of it, if you look at the history of Judaism, what we've always done is that we kind of absorb the culture that we're around, and we continue to change. If you look 2,000 years ago, you can see in the text, and the mission of the rabbis are trying to figure out, how do I deal with Helios the sun god on my synagogue floor? Because my biggest donor wanted Helios the sun god. And so you can see that here in Israel.
Right.
And so part of it is we live in a diverse community, so we have a diverse rabbinate. We have an incredibly diverse population that is the complete cross-section of San Francisco.
Which is amazing. Now, also another thing, because we're, again, talking about building bridges, you're not taking sides on the crisis. I mean, you actually are doing a very special program for refugees, mainly Syrian refugees in San Francisco.
Yeah, it was 2 years ago. It was kind of in the beginning of the crisis and the world was catching on that we stood up and we said, look, as Jews, we have this story. If you go back to the story of Egypt, our core narrative is that we were slaves. We know what it's like to be sitting there on the edge of the sea and feeling stuck, and there's nowhere to go. And you have this enemy coming behind you right now. It happens to be Bashar al-Assad coming at them. And what are we going to do? Because we wish that someone would have reached out to us, so our community came together, and we had an effort beyond what my expectations were. We had people get on planes. They flew to Lesbos and helped people out of the water. We sent 5,000 pounds of clothing to Lesbos. We've sent teddy bears to Jordan to help kids with their trauma. And then the next level, which we hadn't expected to the extent that we've had people in our community adopt refugees and bring them in, not only just from Syria, but also from Afghanistan and around the world.
It's really beautiful. Crisis. And I mean, I guess there are no coincidences, but you happen to be on your trip where you were at the Syrian border. You ran into Dan Shapiro, Obama's ambassador to Israel, and Rick Jacobs, the head of Reform Judaism. And at the time, there was shelling going on.
Yeah.
Was it, were you scared? You're not scared of anything. You're like me. You're just an adventurer, a bold person. But
you never know what will happen. No, we really weren't scared, but you could hear it and see the smoke piles coming up. So there was active shelling happening, and the UN was there monitoring it, the soldiers. And then we happened to run into the U.S. ambassador and the head of Reform Movement, and they spoke to our group and talked about what they were doing, and it was really impactful.
And what about for you? I mean, like this is what's portrayed in the news, not the rest of the Israel experience.
No, it hurt. It was painful.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at this, you're sitting there with all of our kids, and we have an unbelievable number of kids on this trip. 23. And these booms are going off, and you can feel them hitting your chest.
Oh, my gosh.
And you see the parents gathering, collecting their kids, and you realize, oh, I can just get back on the bus. And you look down there, and you think, what are those parents going through? And then we even had people in our group who were very opposed to when I got up and I spoke about the refugees. They said, this is crazy, why would you do that? And one of them with a tear coming down their face, they said, I get it now. But a lot of it is like on our shoulders because, people say Americans are naive, but I come in and I'm like, let's find a way to all get along. I think when you're here, you're seated in the conflict. So like if there's a different perspective being in the States. Right. But as a Jew, it's our obligation. It's not 100%. A choice.
100%.
And that's the difference.
And also, interesting because Rick Jacobs was just trying to pass this whole thing with, making the wall, the Kotel co-ed. It didn't pass. So this is speaking of the same situation.
The same issue.
Yeah. All right, now I want to get into